My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 32, I run one of the most successful event planning companies in Boston. The irony? I plan perfect weddings for others while sitting in a wheelchair. The accident that paralyzed me 6 years ago taught me two things. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes your worst moments reveal who truly loves you. I just wish I learned that lesson before spending $45,000 on my sister Emma's wedding. The roses have to be specifically Juliet Garden roses. Emma had insisted during one of our planning sessions 3 months ago. And they need to be perfectly peach, not pink, not coral. Peach. She stood in my office, surrounded by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Boston skyline, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at the flower catalog. I'd nodded, making notes on my tablet. Even though this was my sister's wedding, I was approaching it with the same professionalism I showed all my clients. Juliet Garden roses and peach. Got it. They're expensive, but I can make it work within the budget. Emma had paused, twirling a strand of her caramel-colored hair. The same shade mine had been before the accident and subsequent surgeries left it streaked with premature gray. About that, I was thinking we could upgrade a few things. By upgrade, she meant increase the budget. Again, we'd started at $25,000, already generous for a wedding I was paying for entirely on my own. Somehow, that number had crept up to $35,000, then $40,000, and now, the venue Emma chose just happened to be one of my biggest clients. The Everly Estate, a magnificent Georgian mansion with sprawling gardens and a grand ballroom, hosted many of my company's most luxurious events. Marcus Everly, the owner, had become not just a client but a friend over the years. He'd been one of the few people who supported my decision to start my own company after the accident. Sarah, Emma's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Are you listening? The string quartet we booked. Well, I found one that's better. They played at the governor's daughter's wedding. I'd rubbed my temples, feeling the familiar tension headache building. How much? Only $5,000 more. She'd said it casually, as if she were asking to borrow $5 for coffee. Emma, we're already way over budget. She'd knelt beside my wheelchair then, taking my hands in hers. A gesture that would have seemed loving if I hadn't known her so well. Please, Sarah, you're my only sister. And it's not like you have to save for your own wedding. The words had hit like a physical blow. I kept my face neutral, years of business negotiations coming in handy. What do you mean by that? Oh, she'd waved her hand vaguely. Since the accident, you've been so focused on work. And with your condition, she trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Who would want to marry someone in a wheelchair? I should have stopped then. Should have recognized the red flags. But she was my sister, my younger sister, whom I'd helped raise after Dad died when she was 12, whom I put through college with my first big bonuses, who had held my hand in the hospital after the accident, at least for the first few weeks, before she'd started finding excuses to visit less and less. Fine, I'd said. 5,000 more. But that's it, Emma. That's absolutely it. She'd hugged me, squealing with delight. You're the best sister ever. This wedding will be perfect, I promise. Perfect. That word should have been another warning sign. The next 3 months had been a whirlwind of planning. Despite Emma having her own wedding planner, she'd insisted she couldn't ask me to both plan and pay for the wedding. I found myself constantly involved. The planner, a young woman named Victoria, seemed to defer to me on most decisions, probably because she knew my reputation in the industry. I'd thrown myself into making sure every detail was perfect, partly because that's who I am, and partly because it was a welcome distraction from my own complicated feelings. Emma was marrying James Chen, a successful surgeon she'd met at a charity gala I'd organized. They'd been dating for just 8 months before he proposed. When you know, you know, Emma had said, flashing her 3-carat diamond ring. What she didn't say was that James came from old money, that his family had expectations, that everything had to be just so. I'd seen it in the way his mother examined every detail of the wedding plans with barely concealed criticism, in the way she looked at me, or rather looked past me, during family dinners. The day before the wedding, I'd been at the venue overseeing the final preparations. My assistant, Marcus, no relation to Marcus Everly, was helping me check the place settings when my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. We need to talk about tomorrow, it read. I called her immediately, thinking there was some last-minute crisis to handle. How right I was, just not in the way I'd expected. Sarah, she'd said, her voice tight. There's been some concern about the photographs. What about them? I vetted Roland personally. He's one of the best wedding photographers in New England. It's not about his skills. She paused. It's about the aesthetics. The aesthetics, I'd repeated, already feeling my stomach clench. The photographer thinks, and James's mother agrees, that having the wheelchair in the photos might be distracting. It could ruin the classic look we're going for. I'd sat there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to form words. It's not that we don't want you there, she continued quickly. Maybe you could just not be in the formal photos. Or maybe we could Photoshop you in later, standing. You want to Photoshop me standing. My voice had sounded distant, strange. Don't be difficult, Sarah. This is my perfect day. Everyone's going to see these photos. They'll be in magazines. James's mother arranged it. We need them to be, perfect. I'd finish for her, without the wheelchair. Without me. Don't be dramatic. You can still come to the reception. Just maybe stay in the back, away from the photographer. I'd hung up then, my hands shaking. Marcus had taken one look at my face and immediately cleared the room of the remaining staff. He'd been with me for 4 years. He knew when I needed space. But I hadn't cried. Instead, I felt a cold, clear anger crystallizing inside me. 6 years of watching people's eyes slide past me, of hearing the whispers, of being treated as less than whole. It all came to a head in that moment. I picked up my phone again, but not to call Emma back. Instead, I'd scrolled through my contacts to a different number. Marcus Everly? It's Sarah Mitchell. I need a favor, and you're not going to like it. Sarah? His familiar baritone had been concerned. What's wrong? Remember when you said you owed me one after I sagged your daughter's sweet 16 with an hour's notice? I'm calling in that favor, and I need to know something. How strict are you about your venue's anti-discrimination policies? There was a pause, then very strict. It's in all our contracts. Why? I'd taken a deep breath. Because I'm about to tell you something that's going to make you very angry, and then I'm going to ask you to help me teach my family a lesson about what really makes a perfect wedding. I'm listening, he'd said. And as I'd told him everything, I'd watched the sun setting through those floor-to-ceiling windows, knowing that by this time tomorrow, my sister's perfect day would be very different from what she planned. Sometimes being the bigger person means standing up for yourself, even if you have to do it sitting down. The morning of Emma's wedding dawned bright and clear. I hadn't slept much, spending most of the night reviewing contracts and making calls. My assistant Marcus stayed late helping me, not asking questions but offering silent support as I set my plan in motion. At 7 a.m., my phone started buzzing with texts from Emma. Where are you? You're supposed to help me get ready. Mom's asking about you. Sarah, don't be petty about this. It's my day. I ignored them all, instead focusing on my laptop screen, where I was reviewing the final numbers. The spreadsheet made for interesting reading. Wedding venue deposit, $15,000. Catering advance, $12,000. Flowers, $8,000. Band and entertainment, $5,000. Photography, $3,000. Miscellaneous decorations, $2,000. Total, $45,000. All paid for by me with receipts and contracts in my name. At 8 a.m., my mother called. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, where are you? Your sister is crying. I took a deep breath. Is she crying because she's worried about me, Mom? Or because she's worried her perfect photos might show that her sister is disabled? Don't be difficult, Mom snapped. You know how important this day is, if the photographer thinks. The photographer doesn't think anything, Mom. Emma and James's mother do. Let's be honest here. Well, she hesitated. Maybe they have a point. These photos will be in magazines. They need to look appropriate. Appropriate, I repeated. You mean without the wheelchair, without any evidence that your damaged daughter exists. Now you're just being dramatic. Of course we want you there. Just, maybe in the background, where you won't be so noticeable. I closed my eyes, feeling that cold anger from yesterday crystallizing further. Mom, do you remember what Dad used to say about family? She went quiet. Dad had been gone for 20 years, but his words still had power. He said family means nobody gets left behind. I continued. Nobody gets hidden away. Nobody gets ashamed of. Your father would have understood. No, I cut her off. Dad would have been ashamed of you, of Emma, of this whole situation. I hung up before she could respond. At 9 a.m., Marcus Everly called. Everything's in place, he said. Are you sure about this, Sarah? Absolutely sure. They're starting to arrive. The mother of the bride is asking about access to the bridal suite. I smiled. Has the new contract been delivered? My lawyer dropped it off personally 20 minutes ago. They're not happy. They're about to be less happy, I said. Give them exactly 1 hour to sign. After that, implement the cancellation clause. At 10 a.m., my phone exploded with calls, first Emma, then Mom, then James's mother, then the wedding planner. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I got dressed in the outfit I'd originally planned to wear as Emma's sister, a deep blue silk dress that had been specially tailored to look elegant, even in my wheelchair. Marcus, my assistant, helped me with my hair and makeup. You look beautiful, boss, he said, adjusting my silver necklace. Dad's last gift to me before he died. Thanks, Marcus. Ready for phase 2. He grinned. The camera crew just arrived. They're setting up now. At 11 a.m., I finally called Emma back. What have you done? She screamed. The venue says we have to sign a new contract. They're talking about discrimination policies and threatening to cancel. Yes, I said calmly. Funny thing about that. Did you know that asking someone to hide their disability for aesthetic purposes is actually illegal? Marcus Everly takes that very seriously. His daughter uses a wheelchair too, something you'd know if you'd ever bothered to attend any of the charity events I've invited you to. This is ridiculous. It's my wedding day. Yes, it is, and you have a choice to make. The new contract specifically requires that all guests, including family members with disabilities, be treated with respect and included in all wedding activities, including photographs. Sign it, and the wedding continues. Refuse, and not only does the venue cancel, but you'll be in breach of contract, meaning you'll owe me every penny I've spent, plus penalties. You wouldn't dare. The camera crew from Channel 5 currently setting up outside the venue says differently. They're very interested in doing a story on discrimination against disabled people at high society weddings. I wonder what James's hospital board would think about that. There was a long silence. You're blackmailing me, she finally said, her voice shaking, on my wedding day. No, Emma, I'm teaching you that actions have consequences. You have 45 minutes to sign the new contract. Oh, and one more thing. I'll be in the front row during the ceremony and in every single photo. Wheelchair and all. I hung up, hands shaking slightly. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. You okay, boss? I nodded. Did you send the photos? He held up his phone, showing me the email he'd sent to every wedding guest. In it were pictures from 6 years ago, Emma and me before my accident, smiling at her college graduation. Then photos from my months in the hospital, where Emma's visits grew increasingly rare. Screenshots of her social media posts about her brave sister, contrasted with texts asking me not to attend her parties because her friends might be uncomfortable. Every guest will see exactly who my sister really is, I said quietly. At 11:45 a.m., James's mother called. Ms. Mitchell, she said, her usual condescending tone replaced with something closer to respect. Perhaps we could discuss this. Nothing to discuss, Mrs. Chen. Sign the contract or the wedding's off. And before you suggest moving venues, good luck finding one on zero notice that won't hear about why you had to move. She was quiet for a moment. The photographer will be fired and replaced with someone from my approved list or no wedding. Your choice. At 11:55 a.m., Marcus Everly texted. They signed. I smiled, checking my reflection one last time. Time to go, Marcus. I have a wedding to attend. Front and center, he grinned. Oh yes, I said, wheeling toward the door. After all, isn't that where family belongs? As we drove to the venue, I thought about the moment 6 years ago when I'd woken up in the hospital, terrified and in pain, to find my life forever changed. I'd lost my mobility that day, but it had taken until now to realize what else I'd lost. The illusion that my sister and mother would always stand by me. But I gained something too. Strength, independence, and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to let them hurt you. The venue came into view, its Georgian columns gleaming in the midday sun. Camera crews were visible near the entrance, and I could see guests arriving, many looking at their phones, no doubt reading the email Marcus had sent. Time to crash a wedding. My way. Entering the Everly Estates grand ballroom in my wheelchair, I felt every eye turn toward me. The magnificent space, with its crystal chandeliers and marble columns, had never seemed so silent. My wheels made a soft whisper against the plush carpet as Marcus pushed me down the center aisle to the front row. Emma stood in the doorway of the bridal suite, her face pale beneath her makeup. Our mother clutched her arm, whispering something urgent in her ear. The wedding planner fluttered nearby, clearly unsure whether to treat me as the pariah they'd intended or the VIP my contracts now demanded. I smiled serenely at them all. The new photographer, a woman I'd worked with many times who happened to have a brother with cerebral palsy, was already setting up her equipment. The original photographer sat in the parking lot, his contract terminated with a hefty penalty clause for discriminatory practices. Ms. Mitchell, James's mother approached, her channel suit immaculate, but her expression strained. Perhaps we could speak privately? No need, Mrs. Chen, I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. I think we've had enough private conversations about keeping the disabled family member hidden away, don't you? She flinched. Several guests who'd been pretending not to listen suddenly found their phones fascinating. Sarah, please, my mother hurried over. You've made your point. Don't ruin your sister's day. I turned to face her fully. That's interesting, Mom. When Emma and Mrs. Chen wanted to exclude me from photos, that wasn't ruining the day. When they suggested I stay in the back where I wouldn't be noticed, that wasn't ruining anything. But me refusing to be hidden away, that's ruining the day. A throat cleared behind us. Marcus Everly stood there, commanding in his tailored suit. Mrs. Mitchell, Mrs. Chen, the ceremony begins in 20 minutes. I trust everything is satisfactory with the new arrangements. The threat in his voice was subtle but clear. Both women nodded stiffly and retreated. As guests filled the rows around me, I noticed something interesting. While some gave me awkward glances, many others made a point to come over and speak to me. Emma's college roommate hugged me warmly. James's colleague from a hospital, a rehabilitation specialist, engaged me in a lengthy conversation about my event planning business. I saw the email, one of Emma's cousins whispered. I had no idea. That's not how family treats family. The ceremony music began. My mother walked down the aisle first, not meeting my eyes as she passed. Then came Emma on our uncle's arm, our father being long gone. She was beautiful in her designer gown, but her smile looked brittle. As she passed my seat in the front row, our eyes met. For a moment, I saw something flicker there, shame, regret. But then she looked away, focusing on James waiting at the altar. The ceremony proceeded according to plan, though probably not the plan Emma had originally envisioned. The photographer moved smoothly through the space, capturing everything, including multiple shots that prominently featured me in my wheelchair in the front row. Every time the camera turned our way, I could see Emma tense slightly. During the vows, I heard my mother sniffling behind her handkerchief. I wondered if she was crying purely for the ceremony, or if some of those tears were for the daughter she failed so completely. After the I doze and the kiss, the new Mr. and Mrs. Chen turned to face their guests. The photographer called for family photos. Family of the bride first, please. This was the moment of truth. Emma hesitated, looking between me and Mrs. Chen. Marcus Everly stepped forward. As per the contract, all family members will be included in all formal photographs. Shall we begin? What followed was possibly the most awkward photo session in wedding history. Emma and James in the center, our mother to one side, me in my wheelchair positioned prominently in the front. The photographer was brilliant, directing everything with professional efficiency while making it clear that any objections would be noted and reported. Wonderful, she called out. Now let's get one of just the sisters. Emma's smile was frozen as she stood beside my wheelchair. I reached up and took her hand, squeezing it perhaps a bit harder than necessary. Smile, sis, I murmured. After all, these photos are going in magazines. The reception that followed was a masterclass in subtle warfare. I had the seating chart revised to place my wheelchair at the family table, directly across from Mrs. Chen. Every time she took a sip of champagne, she had to look at me, at what her precious society photos would now permanently include. During the speeches, my mother stood to toast the happy couple. Her voice wavered as she spoke about family bonds and unconditional love. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then it was my turn. I debated whether to speak at all, but in the end, I decided that silence would be too easy for them. When I had my accident 6 years ago, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. I learned who really stands by you when things get difficult. Some people show their true colors when faced with imperfection, situations that can't be prettied up for photos or made aesthetically pleasing. Emma stared at her plate. Our mother gripped her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. But today isn't about that, I continued. Today is about love, real love, the kind that accepts people as they are, wheelchair and all. I wish you both that kind of love, Emma and James, the kind that doesn't try to hide away the parts it finds inconvenient. The silence that followed my speech was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. Others joined in, the applause building until it filled the space. Through it all, I kept my eyes on my sister, watching as she struggled to maintain her composure. As the band started playing and couples moved to the dance floor, James's father surprisingly approached my table. "Miss Mitchell," he said quietly, "I want you to know, my son had no part in the previous arrangements. He's quite horrified, actually." I nodded. "I know, Mr. Chen. The hospital board where James works has an excellent reputation for inclusivity. It would be a shame if anything were to damage that." He understood my meaning perfectly. With a slight bow, he retreated. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of meaningful glances and whispered conversations. I stayed until the very end, prominently visible in every video, every photo, every moment that Emma had hoped would be perfect. As the guests began to leave, my mother approached one final time. "Was all this really necessary?" she asked, her voice tired. I looked up at her, this woman who had raised me, who had taught me to stand up for myself, and who had then expected me to accept being hidden away. "Yes, Mom, it was. Because the next time someone in a wheelchair asks you or Emma to plan their wedding, maybe you'll remember this day. Maybe you'll understand that their day can be perfect too, exactly as they are." She had no response to that. As Marcus helped me into my car at the end of the night, he asked, "Was it worth it, boss?" I watched the lights of the venue fade in the rearview mirror. "Ask me tomorrow." But for now, yes. Yes, it was. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making sure that everyone sees exactly who people really are and who you really are too. 3 months after Emma's wedding, I sat in my office reviewing the latest edition of Boston Society Life magazine. There, spread across 6 glossy pages, was my sister's wedding feature. Every photo included me prominently in my wheelchair, front row at the ceremony, centered in family portraits, giving my toast at the reception. The article praised the inclusive nature of the celebration, noting how the Chen Mitchell wedding set a new standard for accessibility and acceptance in high society events. I smiled, knowing this wasn't the coverage Mrs. Chen had originally envisioned. My phone buzzed. A text from James, my new brother-in-law. "Can we meet for coffee?" Emma and James had returned from their honeymoon 2 months ago. While Emma hadn't spoken to me since the wedding, James had reached out several times. I'd appreciated that he had no part in the original plan to exclude me, and apparently he'd been horrified when he learned the full story. We met at my favorite cafe near the office. James looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from living with constant tension. "Emma's in therapy," he said after we'd gotten our drinks. She finally admitted she needs help dealing with her feelings about your accident, about how she handled everything." I nodded, letting him continue. "Your email, the one with all those photos and texts from the past 6 years. It forced her to see herself clearly for the first time. She's not proud of who she's become." "And Mom?" I asked, stirring my latte. "She's struggling. The country club crowd isn't as welcoming anymore. Turns out, discriminating against your disabled daughter isn't as socially acceptable as she thought." I felt a twinge of satisfaction, followed by an unexpected pang of sadness. "Did you know I got 3 new clients specifically because of how I handled the wedding? All families with disabled members who want to ensure they're treated with respect at their events." James smiled. "You turned it into a marketing opportunity. Brilliant. Life gives you lemons." I shrugged. He leaned forward. "Emma wants to apologize. Properly, not just because she feels socially pressured. Would you be willing to hear her out?" I considered this. The past 3 months had been peaceful, if lonely. My business was thriving, and I'd started dating again. A lawyer I'd met through Marcus Everly, who never once made me feel like my wheelchair was an inconvenience. I'll think about it, I said finally. 2 weeks later, Emma came to my office. She looked different, humbler somehow, less polished than her usual perfect self. I'm sorry, she said simply, sitting across from my desk. I've been trying to write a longer apology, but everything sounds inadequate. I was horrible, not just at the wedding, but for years before that. I was so focused on appearing perfect that I forgot how to be human. Therapy seems to be working, I observed. She nodded. It's helping me understand why I pushed you away after your accident. I was scared. Seeing you in the hospital, knowing it could happen to anyone. I couldn't handle it. So I distanced myself, pretended everything was fine, while treating you worse and worse. And Mom? She's not ready to admit she was wrong. But she's losing friends over this. The article, everyone saw it. Everyone knows. Actions have consequences, I said quietly. Yes, Emma agreed. They do. She hesitated. I know I have no right to ask, but do you think we could try to rebuild? Not pretend nothing happened, but start over. I studied my sister, really looked at her for the first time in years. The perfectly curated exterior had cracked, revealing something more genuine underneath. We can try, I said finally, but on my terms. No more hiding, no more shame, no more pretending I'm not disabled. This is who I am. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm learning to be proud of who you are too. Those clients you got because of the wedding? Their events are amazing. I saw the photos. You're changing how people think about disability in our industry. One wedding at a time, I smiled. As Emma left my office that day, I thought about perfection, how we chase it, how we define it, how it can blind us to what really matters. My wheelchair had taught me that perfection isn't about appearing flawless. It's about being authentically yourself. The following week, I received an invitation to dinner at Emma and James's house, a small family gathering. At the bottom was a handwritten note, ramp installed at front entrance, all photos welcome. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. Sometimes the perfect revenge isn't about destroying relationships. It's about forcing them to transform into something real, something honest, something worth keeping. And sometimes the most perfect moments come when we stop trying to be perfect at all.